You don't belong in first class." The words hit harder than turbulence, loud, sharp, public. A uniformed pilot stood in the aisle, finger inches from a calm black man's face. The cabin froze. Passengers turned, phones lifted. Every second stretched like a wire about to snap. He didn't flinch, didn't even blink. "This is my seat," he said quietly, holding a torn boarding pass in one steady hand. Her jaw tightened. "Step back. Security's on its way." Quote. That word security hung heavy, colder than the air conditioning. A man 2 rows back whispered, "Is this really happening?" Another murmured, "You can tell they've already decided who he is." The pilot leaned closer, voice clipped, angry. "You people think a printed pass gives you access to premium service? Not on my plane." He looked up at her, calm as still water. "Your plane?" he asked. Interesting. That one sentence cracked the room's certainty. Every head turned again. The young flight attendant by the galley stopped moving. She looked between them, caught between training and conscience. Marcus sat back down, movements precise, unbothered. The pilot was still standing over him, heat rising under the collar of her crisp white uniform. He'd seen this before different places, same pattern. At 25, denied entry to a lounge after closing his first $1 million deal. At 32, questioned at a bank he owned shares in. At 46, he stopped explaining himself. "Sir," she barked again, voice cutting through the hum of the engines. "Move, now." Marcus met her eyes. No, he didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. Behind her, the intercom clicked. A co-pilot's voice asked if everything was under control. Her lips curved. "It will be." Marcus reached into his pocket, not fast, not threatening, and lifted his phone. "Rachel," he said softly, eyes still on the pilot. "Log this moment." Quote. She frowned, confused. "What did you just say?" He leaned back in seat 2 amperes. Quiet, unshaken, just making sure history gets this right. The pilot blinked, uncertain for the first time. And in that silence, the balance of power began to shift. 12 minutes later, she'd wish she had never spoken. "GPT Black CEO Mui, 35 phút said." The plane hadn't moved an inch, but the air inside felt heavier. Passengers were whispering now, the kind of uneasy murmur that spreads when dignity and authority collide. Marcus Carter sat still in seat 2 amperes, his phone resting on the tray table. The pilot, her badge, read Nicole Harris, stood planted in the aisle, arms crossed, voice sharp enough to slice through the hum of the cabin. "Sir, this is your final warning. You either move to economy or you're leaving this aircraft." Marcus's reply was soft. "You're escalating something you don't understand." Quote. Behind Nicole, a younger flight attendant shifted nervously. Her name tag read Mia Lang. This was her first week on the job, and her eyes darted between the captain and the calm man in the seat. "Captain," she started quietly. His ticket scanned green. "It's valid." Nicole cut her off with a glare. "You're dismissed, trainee. Go back to the galley." Mia hesitated, then stepped back, but not before sliding her phone into her pocket, recording. A man 2 rows back whispered, "He's not wrong. I saw the ticket." Another answered, "Doesn't matter. She's the pilot. He's already guilty." Nicole snapped her fingers toward the aisle. "Linda, call gate security." The cabin chief hesitated, then tapped her radio. Marcus didn't move. His composure wasn't defiance, it was control. He leaned back, voice steady. "Rachel, phase 1 complete." Nicole frowned. "What was that?" Marcus didn't answer. Her tone grew louder, brittle with anger. "Do you think your phone makes you powerful? Because once security boards, it's over." Marcus looked up, eyes cool. "No, it's already over. You just don't know it yet." From row 4, a woman spoke up, her phone camera raised. "This is discrimination, and I'm recording it." The pilot turned, snapping, "Ma'am, stop filming or you'll be removed as well." The woman didn't lower her phone. "Try it." The tension cracked. The cabin wasn't just a plane anymore, it was a courtroom, and everyone was watching the verdict form. Nicole raised her chin. "Security will handle you, sir." Marcus nodded once. "Perfect. They'll need to speak with corporate when they arrive." At that exact moment, his phone vibrated. A voice came through his earpiece, clean, precise, unmistakably professional. "Marcus, this is Rachel. The board's online. Protocol 7 has been confirmed. Proceed when ready." Quote. He smiled faintly, eyes never leaving the pilot. "Copy that." Nicole blinked. "Who do you think you are?" He exhaled once, calm as a man about to land a deal. "Someone who doesn't need to raise his voice to change your flight plan." The murmurs in the cabin grew louder. Passengers began whispering his name. Someone recognized him from a business magazine. "That's Marcus Carter," a voice said. "The CEO of Horizon." Nicole's face drained of color. What did you just say? Mia stepped forward again, this time firm. He's the owner of this airline. Phones went up like fireworks. The tension that had filled the cabin now flipped in an instant shock, disbelief, then quiet applause. Marcus didn't gloat. He just looked at the pilot, calm and final. You tore up a CEO's ticket because you didn't like how he looked. Now let's see how far that arrogance flies. The engines hummed softly. Outside, the jet bridge lights flickered back on. The plane was grounded, and Nicole Harris's career had just hit the runway nose first. The moment the words "he's the owner of this airline" hit the air, the cabin changed. Silence stretched so long it felt physical. Even the hum of the engines sounded hesitant, like the plane itself was listening. Nicole Harris, the pilot who had just ordered him out, stood frozen, her jaw tight, her breath sharp. "That's impossible," she said. "No one told us." Marcus cut her off gently. "You didn't ask." Chloe. Passengers began to whisper his name like an echo traveling through metal and shock. Marcus Carter, the man whose company, Horizon Group, had acquired the struggling airline 2 years ago. The man who had walked onto his own flight unnoticed and disrespected. In the back, Mia Lang, the young attendant, took a slow breath. Her recording was still running, the red light a small pulse of truth in a room full of noise. Nicole's headset crackled. "Captain, we've got gate control asking about a delay. What's going on in there?" She hesitated, voice small now. "Stand by." Marcus rose from his seat, not fast, not theatrical, just deliberate. His presence filled the aisle like quiet gravity. "You said this isn't my seat," he said, voice low. "Let's correct that." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim leather case. Inside his corporate ID, embossed with the gold Horizon insignia and his name beneath it. He handed it to Linda, the cabin chief. "You can verify that with your system, if it's still working." Linda's hands trembled as she scanned it. The monitor beeped, and the Horizon logo flashed green across the display. "Confirmed." A murmur swept through the cabin. One passenger whispered, "Oh my God, it's real." Nicole's face drained of color. "Mr. Carter, I didn't know—" He stopped her with a glance. "That's the point." For a moment, no one spoke. The power dynamic had flipped so completely that even gravity seemed to shift with it. Marcus took a breath. "Everyone, remain seated. This flight isn't going anywhere until we address what just happened." Nicole tried to salvage control. "Sir, with all due respect," he turned, his tone cutting but calm. "You disrespected me on my own plane, in front of my passengers with cameras recording. That's not respect. That's negligence." Mia stepped closer, voice trembling but brave. "She tore up his ticket, sir. I tried to stop her." Marcus nodded once, his expression softening toward her. "And you did the right thing. That's what leadership looks like." Rachel's voice came through his phone again, audible to those nearby. "Marcus, corporate's monitoring live. They've confirmed identification and are ready for next steps." "Good," he replied quietly. Then to the crew, "We'll be deplaning all non-compliant staff immediately." Quote. Nicole blinked, panic rising behind her eyes. "You can't just—" "Actually," Marcus interrupted, "I can, and I will." Passengers started clapping softly, not out of spectacle, but solidarity. He turned to the front, looking at the stunned faces of his employees. "This plane won't take off with arrogance in the cockpit. Not today. Not ever again." Then, with one tap on his phone, he said into his earpiece, "Rachel, execute full suspension for the flight crew involved in Incident A-127." Quote. Her voice came back steady. "Confirmed, Mr. Carter. Effective immediately." Nicole's radio chirped. Access denied. Her ID light turned red. Marcus looked around one last time, his tone even. "You all witnessed it. Let this flight be remembered not for turbulence but for truth." And for the first time that night, justice was airborne. The doors of the aircraft remained sealed, but the world inside had already shifted. Passengers sat in stunned silence, some filming, others simply staring, as the captain who had shouted moments earlier now stood small beneath the fluorescent cabin lights. Marcus Carter didn't pace or raise his voice. He simply existed with a kind of authority that filled every inch of space without demanding it. "Linda," he said evenly, turning toward the cabin chief, "you're in command now. Secure the flight deck and notify ground operations that this crew is relieved of duty." Quote. Linda hesitated, her hands shaking. "Mr. Carter, are you sure you want to—" He met her eyes. "You saw what happened. You heard her. This airline runs on integrity, not ego." The intercom crackled as gate control called again, confused about the delay. Marcus motioned for Linda to answer. "This is Flight 227, she said, her voice steadying with each word. "We're grounded for personnel reassignment by executive order." A gasp rippled through the rows. It was official. Nicole Harris swallowed hard. "Sir, please. I made a mistake. It wasn't personal." Marcus studied her for a moment, then said, "That's the problem. You thought it wasn't personal, but humiliation always is to the one who's living it." Mia Lang, the young attendant, stepped forward again, clutching her phone. "Mr. Carter, I have the entire incident recorded start to finish. I can send it to corporate." "Good," Marcus said. "Archive it. Not to destroy someone's career, but to teach the next class what leadership doesn't look like." Nicole's composure cracked. "You can't fire a captain mid-flight," she shouted. Marcus's tone stayed quiet, almost kind. "Then it's a good thing we never took off." The cabin erupted in murmurs, half disbelief, half satisfaction. One passenger in row 3 whispered, "This man's a legend." Marcus turned toward the passengers. "I appreciate everyone's patience. I know this isn't what you expected when you boarded tonight, but what you witnessed matters. Accountability matters." From his earpiece, Rachel's voice came through, crisp and calm. "Marcus, ground team has been briefed. Security and HR representatives are waiting at the gate. The board has issued a formal statement authorizing immediate suspension." "Thank you, Rachel," he said softly. "Keep them on standby." Nicole's radio beeped again, access revoked. The red indicator glowed on her screen. Her face went pale. "You're ending my career," she whispered. "No," Marcus said. "You did that when you tore up my ticket." Mia looked from one to the other, her eyes glistening. "Sir, what happens next?" He turned toward her, voice steady. "Next, we rebuild trust one flight at a time." He took a breath, then looked at the pilot and co-pilot. "You'll exit this plane with the same respect you denied others. Quietly." Quote. Nicole tried to speak again, but words failed her. The passengers didn't cheer. They just watched, heavy with understanding, as she and the co-pilot gathered their things and walked down the aisle, the longest walk of their careers. When the doors opened, cool air from the jet bridge rushed in, sweeping through the cabin like a reset. Marcus turned back to the crowd, his voice low but firm. "This plane will fly again. But first, it'll remember what respect feels like." Quote. And as the door sealed behind the dismissed crew, the passengers broke into applause, not loud, not mocking, but grateful. Justice had landed, and for once, everyone on board could breathe. "GPT Black CEO mới, 35 phút said." The jet bridge door had barely closed behind the dismissed crew when the cabin exhaled. A slow, collective breath that sounded like relief mixed with disbelief. The hum of the air vents was the only thing filling the silence. Then, slowly, someone clapped. One person, then another. Within seconds, the sound grew a quiet, rhythmic applause that wasn't for spectacle but for something deeper. Marcus Carter didn't bow or smile. He simply nodded once, acknowledging the people who'd just witnessed what accountability looked like in real time. He turned to Linda, the acting cabin chief. "Get on the intercom," he said calmly. "Announce that a new crew will be boarding shortly, and thank our passengers for their patience." Linda nodded, voice steady but emotional. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be continuing our journey soon. Thank you for your understanding and for your decency tonight." When she clicked off the mic, she turned back to Marcus. "Sir, in 20 years of flying, I've never seen anything like this." He looked at her evenly. "That's because most people who get disrespected don't have the power to stop the plane." Her expression softened. "You didn't stop it, sir. You reset it." Quo. At the back of the cabin, Mia Lang approached hesitantly, still holding her phone. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice small but sure, "corporate has already requested my footage. Rachel from headquarters emailed me directly." Marcus gave a faint smile. "You did the right thing. It takes courage to speak up when silence feels safer." Mia nodded. "Honestly, I was scared." "Courage doesn't mean you're not scared," he said quietly. "It means you showed up anyway." Quat. Outside the cabin windows, airport lights flickered against the tarmac like a slow heartbeat. Ground staff were approaching with new crew members, all of them briefed on what had happened. The energy had shifted completely from chaos to clarity. Then came the voice in his earpiece again, Rachel's, calm and precise. "Marcus, media is picking up the story. Some passengers posted early clips. It's trending." He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Figures?" Quote. "Would you like us to issue a preliminary statement?" she asked. "Not yet," he said. "Let the truth breathe before PR touches it." He glanced around the cabin, the passengers whispering softly, some thanking Mia as she passed by. He could feel the weight of the moment settling like gravity. Real change doesn't start in boardrooms. It starts in moments like this. He walked slowly down the aisle, speaking low enough for people to hear but soft enough to feel personal. You all deserved better than what happened here tonight. This flight isn't canceled. It's being corrected. A man in row 4 raised his hand. Mr. Carter, if I may, you didn't just handle it. You led it. That's rare these days. Marcus nodded with humility. Leadership isn't about control. It's about example. Rachel's voice returned through his earpiece. Replacement captain and first officer ready at gate. Your orders? Bring them in, he said. Let's finish what we started. As the door reopened, the new crew entered calm, respectful, eyes forward. The energy shifted again, this time toward balance. Marcus turned to Linda and Mia. Once we're airborne, I want a full report filed directly to my office. Every name, every action, every word. We'll retrain not to punish, but to reform. He looked toward the passengers one last time before sitting back in 2 amperes. Tonight wasn't about a seat, he said quietly. It was about who gets to sit with dignity. The applause that followed wasn't loud, but it was pure. The sound of something broken finally starting to heal. The engines started again, a soft vibration running beneath the floor. The plane hadn't moved yet, but the tension that once poisoned the cabin was gone, replaced by something quiet, deliberate, almost sacred. Marcus Carter sat in seat 2 amperes, not as a passenger anymore, but as the steady center of a storm that had finally passed. Mia Lang, still a little pale but standing taller, moved carefully through the aisle, checking on passengers with the kind of composure that only comes from surviving chaos. Coffee or water, sir? She asked gently. Marcus smiled faintly. Coffee, strong, no sugar. She nodded, almost proud that he'd spoken to her like a peer, not a subordinate. When she walked away, Marcus glanced toward the window. The airport lights blurred in the glass like reflections of memory moments of bias, humiliation, and endurance that had led him here. Rachel's voice came through his earpiece again, crisp as always. Marcus, we've locked the HR files. Nicole Harris and the co-pilot are officially terminated. Security confirmed they were escorted off property. Good, he said quietly. And the passengers? They're already posting. Hashtags are climbing number grounded for respect. Number Carter flight. Quote. He let out a slow breath. Let them talk. This time they're talking about truth. Linda approached from the front of the cabin, her composure restored. Mr. Carter, ground operations cleared us for takeoff. Replacement crew is prepped. We can leave whenever you're ready. Then let's do it, he said, and make sure the passengers know this. No one leaves tonight feeling unheard. She nodded and returned to the intercom. Her announcement was simple, human. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We'll be departing shortly. Tonight's delay wasn't about weather or logistics. It was about respect. On behalf of our new crew and Horizon Airlines, thank you for standing with what's right. Applause rippled again, not explosive but heartfelt. Mia returned with his coffee, setting it gently on the tray. Sir, she said quietly, I want to say something. He looked up. Go ahead. When she told you to leave, I froze. I didn't do enough. I should have spoken sooner. Marcus shook his head. You spoke when it mattered. Most people never do. She hesitated. What's going to happen to me? He smiled. You're getting promoted. Her eyes widened. Sir? You showed integrity under pressure. That's leadership material. Expect an email from my office tomorrow. She blinked hard, trying not to cry. Thank you. Marcus turned slightly toward the aisle, raising his voice just enough for those nearby to hear. If this flight proves anything, it's that fairness doesn't need a title, it needs a spine. Linda gave a small smile from the galley, spoken like a CEO. The engines roared softly as the plane began to push back from the gate. Through the window, Marcus watched the terminal lights fade. For the first time all night, the cabin felt weightless, not because it was airborne, but because it was clean. He took a slow sip of his coffee. It was strong, just the way he liked it. And for the first time in hours, the silence around him wasn't heavy, it was earned. In 12 minutes, he'd gone from accused to commanding, from target to teacher. And as the plane rolled toward the runway, one truth settled in like gravity itself. Justice had taken flight. The wheels lifted off the runway with a soft thud, and for the first time that night, the cabin felt light again. A strange calm settled in the air, a silence made not of fear, but of respect. Marcus Carter leaned back in seat 2 amperes, the same seat that had almost become a symbol of humiliation. Now it was something else entirely, a reminder that power doesn't always arrive wearing a suit or speaking loudly. Sometimes it just sits still until the truth catches up. Across the aisle, Mia Lang moved through the rows with newfound confidence, checking seatbelts and offering quiet smiles. She no longer looked like the timid trainee from an hour ago. She looked like someone who'd just seen what courage could do. "Smooth takeoff," Linda said as she approached. She was calm again, grounded in purpose. Marcus nodded. "A lot smoother than the landing's going to be for a few people." Linda gave a small laugh under her breath. "Sir, corporate just sent an internal memo, your name's all over it. They're calling it Protocol 7 Implementation, in-flight integrity response." "Quit." Marcus raised an eyebrow. Catchy. He looked around the cabin, noting how people now met his eyes with quiet acknowledgement. No fear, no pity, just mutual understanding. The story had traveled faster than the plane itself. Passengers whispered softly to one another, some scrolling through feeds where his name was already trending. Rachel's voice came through his earpiece again. "Marcus, board just approved a company-wide ethics review. They want you to lead it personally." Quote. He exhaled slowly. "That's going to rattle some cages." "That's the point," she replied. He looked out the window. The city below was a mosaic of gold and blue, lights pulsing like a heartbeat. For a fleeting moment, he remembered the first time he flew in coach 30 years ago, a nervous intern clutching a paper ticket and a borrowed briefcase. The flight attendant had called him son and asked if he was lost. He hadn't forgotten. Some memories don't fade, they evolve into fuel. He turned back to Linda. "How's our passenger morale?" She smiled faintly. "Better than most corporate retreats." "Good," he said, "then we're already winning." A soft chime signaled the seatbelt sign turning off. The atmosphere loosened further. The cabin finally felt human again. Passengers leaned back, sipping water, trading small smiles with Mia as she passed. Then an older man from row 4 stood up and approached quietly. His voice trembled not with fear but gratitude. "Mr. Carter, I just wanted to say thank you. My grandson's black. He's 16. Seeing you handle this the way you did it means something." Marcus stood and shook his hand firmly. "Tell him the world won't hand him dignity. He'll have to claim it, but when he does, it'll last." The man nodded, eyes glossy, before returning to his seat. As the plane cruised at 30,000 feet, Marcus sat back again. Outside, the clouds glowed silver under the moonlight. Inside, calm replaced chaos. Rachel's voice returned softly in his ear. "Marcus, media's requesting a statement. Want me to draft something?" He smiled faintly. "Yeah, keep it simple." "How simple?" He looked out the window, voice low and clear. "Tell them respect should never need confirmation." The clouds parted ahead, the horizon wide and clear, just like the future he'd just forced into being. At 30,000 feet, the cabin lights dimmed to a soft amber glow. Passengers were finally relaxing, sipping water or scrolling quietly through their phones. But Marcus Carter wasn't resting. His mind was already moving at cruising altitude far ahead of the plane. Rachel's voice came through the earpiece again. "Marcus, I've compiled the preliminary report on the incident. Do you want to review it now or after landing?" "Now," he said. "Let's handle it while it's fresh." A soft vibration buzzed through his phone as a secure file appeared on the screen. He opened it. Inside was everything: audio logs, timestamps, the original passenger manifest, and a formal statement drafted by Horizon's PR team. He read in silence, the reflection of the screen flickering across his eyes. Linda stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Mr. Carter, you haven't even touched your coffee. You've been in go mode since we left the gate." He looked up, calm but firm. "Accountability doesn't clock out at takeoff." She smiled slightly. "Still, even CEOs are human." Quote. He paused. "That's debatably." Mia passed by, checking seatbelts again. Marcus motioned for her to stop. "Mia," he said quietly, "how are the passengers holding up?" "They're fine," she said. "Some of them thanked me for standing up earlier. I didn't even know what to say." He nodded. "Say you're welcome. Sometimes that's all people need to hear to know they were seen." Rachel's voice cut in again, more serious this time. "Marcus, I need to flag something. HR found previous complaints against Captain Harris. 3, to be exact, all involving passengers of color. Each one marked as unverified and closed." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Who signed off on them?" "Regional director. Same one who handled compliance last quarter." He leaned back, his expression sharpening. "Reopen them, all of them, and attach today's footage as precedent." "Already done," Rachel said. The cabin hit a small pocket of turbulence. A few gasps echoed, but Marcus didn't flinch. He'd weathered worse storms on the ground. Linda steadied herself, then looked at him curiously. "Sir, if you don't mind me asking, why didn't you announce who you were sooner?" He turned his head, gaze steady. "Because if I have to announce it to be treated decently, then we're already failing." She nodded, quietly humbled. The seatbelt light flicked on again. Mia made her way to the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats as we pass through a brief patch of turbulence." Her voice was confident now, smooth and professional. The passengers listened. They trusted her. Marcus smiled faintly, watching her handle the moment. "That's leadership," he murmured. Rachel's voice returned, softer this time. "Marcus, one more thing. The board wants to commend how you handled tonight, but they're asking how you'd like to address the public tomorrow." He didn't hesitate. "We don't issue apologies for enforcing values. Draft something that says this: Horizon Airlines stands for dignity at every altitude, nothing more." "Understood," Rachel replied. He closed his phone and looked out the window. Below him, the clouds stretched endlessly white, unbothered, eternal. For the first time since boarding, Marcus exhaled. The night had been heavy, but the sky didn't feel hostile anymore. In the reflection of the window, he saw his own calm stare looking back the face of a man who had been doubted, challenged, underestimated, but never broken. And somewhere between the clouds and the dark horizon, the world finally started to feel balanced again. The sky outside was ink black now, only interrupted by streaks of faint light along the horizon. Inside, the cabin hummed with a calm rhythm, the kind that only follows a storm. Passengers spoke in low voices, some still replaying the events in their minds. Others simply sat back, watching the man in seat 2 Amperes who had quietly changed everything. Marcus Carter had his laptop open, typing a message to the board. His face was calm, his words measured. "Tonight wasn't about policy," he wrote. "It was about people and what happens when we forget who we serve." He paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard, then added, "Leadership doesn't begin with power. It begins with listening." Linda approached quietly, crouching beside his seat so as not to disturb the others. "Mr. Carter," she said softly, "the new captain would like to speak with you, privately." He nodded and followed her toward the front galley, where the cockpit door stood slightly ajar. Inside, Captain Ruiz, a seasoned pilot with gray streaks in his hair, rose as Marcus entered. "Sir," Ruiz said respectfully, "I just wanted to say, what happened earlier shouldn't have. On behalf of every pilot who believes in what this uniform stands for, I'm sorry." Marcus looked at him for a long moment, then extended his hand. "You weren't part of the problem, Captain, but you can be part of the solution." Ruiz shook his hand firmly. "You have my word on that." When Marcus stepped back into the cabin, the passengers applauded quietly again, no prompting, no speeches, just instinct. He wasn't a celebrity to them. He was proof that dignity could win without shouting. Rachel's voice broke through his earpiece. "Marcus, legal just confirmed the official report. FAA has been notified. The footage Mia recorded will be used for bias training across all branches." Marcus smiled faintly. "Good. Make sure Mia's credited by name. She deserves to be remembered for standing up." "You got it," Rachel said. "Also, media outlets are still requesting interviews. Want me to schedule CNN or Forbes first?" He chuckled softly. "Neither. Let's start with Horizon's internal newsletter. The people inside the company need to understand the lesson before the world does." Linda returned with 2 cups of coffee, one for him, one for Mia. "She's been asking if it's okay to serve you again," she said with a small smile. Marcus took the cup and glanced back toward Mia, who stood near the exit row, alert and graceful. "Tell her I don't need service," he said. "Just honesty. That's all I ever ask for." Linda's eyes softened. "You know, sir, I've worked for 3 airlines and met 100 executives, but tonight's the first time I've seen leadership without a microphone." Marcus's gaze drifted toward the window. "That's because leadership isn't supposed to perform. It's supposed to restore." Rachel came through the earpiece one last time. "Marcus, the board just sent approval for a company-wide initiative under your name. They're calling it the Carter Code." He almost laughed. "A code? What's in it?" "Clause 1, she said. "Respect isn't situational." He leaned back, looking out at the stars, each one steady, unflinching, bright. "Then it's a start." As the plane cruised toward its destination, passengers drifted into quiet rest. But Marcus stayed awake, watching the horizon shift from black to blue. A new dawn forming out of a night that had demanded justice and finally received it. Somewhere above the clouds, peace felt earned again. The sky outside was beginning to turn gray, a quiet signal that dawn was near. The plane had crossed through the night without another word of tension. For the first time in hours, Marcus Carter allowed himself to breathe fully. A soft chime echoed overhead. Linda approached with a tablet in hand. "Mr. Carter," she said quietly, "we've just received a message from corporate operations. They're requesting a live debrief when we land. Marcus nodded. They'll get one. No filters, no edits. Quote. He closed his laptop, setting it aside. The reflection in the window showed a man both exhausted and unbreakable. Every decision he'd made tonight had cost something, but the return was worth it. Mia appeared by his seat, her voice tentative but sincere. Sir, I just wanted to thank you again. I didn't think people like you noticed people like me. Marcus gave her a small, tired smile. The people who notice are the ones who've been ignored before. She hesitated. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you just yell or threaten to call someone? Most people would have lost it. Marcus looked at her for a long moment before answering. Because anger might win the argument, but calm wins the room. She nodded slowly, eyes thoughtful. I'll remember that. Rachel's voice returned in his earpiece. Marcus, your name's everywhere. CNN, BBC, Reuters, they're calling it the flight that changed corporate policy. He exhaled. It's not about me, Rachel. Make sure that's clear. I know, she said, but the world loves a story that ends with accountability. He smiled faintly. Then let's make sure it doesn't end. File a directive mandatory bias retraining for every branch, every rank, no exceptions. Already drafted, she said. Linda approached again, her tone softer now. Mr. Carter, we'll be landing in about 30 minutes. Would you like to say something to the passengers before descent? Marcus thought for a moment, then stood slowly. The cabin quieted without him asking. Every eye turned toward him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. I want to thank each of you for your patience tonight, he began. What happened wasn't just unprofessional, it was unjust. And when we ignore injustice, even in small spaces like this cabin, we give it permission to grow. He paused, letting the words land. Tonight wasn't about punishment. It was about correction. And correction begins with courage, the kind some of you showed when you spoke up, recorded, or simply refused to look away. The plane was silent, every passenger hanging on his words. I built this airline because I wanted people to fly without fear of being judged for who they are or what they look like. That promise still stands. You reminded me tonight why it must. When he finished, no one clapped right away. They just sat in the moment, absorbing it, feeling it. Then the applause began not loud, but deep and steady. Marcus gave a single nod, then sat back down. The intercom chimed again, and the captain's voice filled the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin our descent shortly. Thank you for flying with Horizon Airlines. As the plane dipped through layers of soft morning light, Marcus looked out the window. The horizon stretched wide and golden, reflecting across the glass like possibility itself. Justice hadn't just landed tonight. It was preparing for its next flight. GPT Black CEO mới, 35 phút set. The landing gear unfolded with a low rumble, and the morning light poured through the cabin windows like forgiveness. The passengers straightened their seats, but the atmosphere was different now, calm, reverent, aware. As the plane touched down, a soft applause broke out, the kind that wasn't for the landing itself, but for everything that had landed before it: truth, integrity, and consequence. Marcus Carter didn't smile. He just watched the runway blur past, eyes steady, mind already on what came next. When the aircraft slowed to a stop at the gate, Linda made the final announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome home. On behalf of Horizon Airlines and the man who built it, thank you for reminding us what respect really means. The passengers stood, some quietly shaking Marcus's hand as they passed. A few whispered thanks. One woman simply placed a hand over her heart and nodded. Mia lingered near the front door, waiting as the last passenger exited. Mr. Carter, she said softly, I think they'll remember this flight forever. He met her gaze. Let's hope they remember why. Quote. Rachel's voice came through his earpiece again. Marcus, press is waiting at the terminal, cameras everywhere. He sighed, adjusting his jacket. Then they'll get a statement. One line. What line? Rachel asked. He glanced toward the open door, sunlight washing across the jet bridge. Tell them dignity doesn't need permission to board. Kuka. And with that, Marcus Carter stepped off the plane not as a passenger, not even as a CEO, but as a man who'd proven that silence could speak louder than rage. Justice had touched down, and this time, it wasn't leaving the ground again. Outside the terminal, the morning was golden and clean, the kind of light that feels like a restart. Cameras clicked as Marcus Carter stepped through the gate, calm amid the noise. Reporters shouted his name, questions overlapping, but he didn't stop. He didn't need to. Rachel's voice echoed softly through his earpiece. They're asking if this changes company policy. Marcus adjusted his cuff, his tone quiet but certain. It doesn't change it. It enforces it. He paused before the waiting microphones, his reflection caught in every lens. Respect. he said, voice steady, isn't a service upgrade. It's a baseline. And at Horizon, it's non-negotiable. The crowd fell silent. For a heartbeat, even the airport seemed to listen. He turned, walking toward the sunlight spilling through the glass doors. Mia stood at the edge of the jet bridge, watching him go, pride flickering across her face. By the time he disappeared into the glare, one truth had already taken flight: justice doesn't shout. It simply arrives on time with its head held high.